Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's virtual showcase. My name is Colleen Bucsko. I'm your host for our breakout track, Evolution of Analytics and the Modern Data-Driven World. I have the pleasure of speaking with Juan Nunez, the leader of our Data and Analytics practice, and Bill Shay, Chief Architect of the Data and Analytics practice.
Thank you, Colleen. It's actually, I'm really excited about this part. I enjoyed very much the conversation with Tom. Tom was awesome. So if you missed it, take a look at that. But now we get to talk to Colleen, and Colleen is one of not just our moderator, and she's going to keep us on track here, which I'm already challenging her on. But she is one of our users of data. So she's always challenging our thought process and how we interact internally. So I'm really excited about chatting with you, Colleen, today.
Thank you, Juan. Well, that actually brings me to one point I wanted to bring up. So earlier today it was mentioned that analytics are no longer just under the scope of the data role. So how would you guide someone like me or teams, that focus on reporting and analytics to fully optimize their data to drive business outcomes, maybe if it wasn't necessarily part of, a direct part of their role before?
Yeah. So I'll go very briefly, and Bill, I really want you to jump in because you have a lot of experience in taking data to the business. But I think it's a flip, it's a change. In the past, from a data analytics perspective, we created solutions. We took them to those who needed or who would have benefited from it. Now there is a change in the way that people understand that they need to be running their business and the data that they need to be able to make those decisions. So there's a flip, and there's a very important drive from business partners and business leaders to really take command of the data and then the insights they need to make decisions.
And I think it goes back to having a lot of these key systems now being cloud-based and supporting systems that don't necessarily feed into your traditional data warehousing, right? And so some departments may have access to specific data sets that are siloed, but if they were married in with some maybe sales data, they're able to gain some insights there that actually drive revenue. And so, but they don't necessarily have the tools to do that themselves because they don't necessarily have the right access or things like that. So kind of these unified platforms and access to curated data. And the reason why people sometimes don't have access is because they're not sure what they're looking at. And so having a way to catalog the data and make it easier to consume and then blend with the data that they're very familiar with to drive these insights is very, very powerful.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of just kind of diving into some of the work we've done lately. One of our customers, they have this system that their own clients interact with, and one of the key performance indicators for that system is the way that system is reacting to that interaction, that those customers are being able to come into the system, complete their transactions within them. And that there were multiple components that had to come together. One is, how's that system operating? So really more from understanding the system and seeing when degradation is happening and being able to take care of those things before that customer-facing system failed or degraded considerably. And the other side was data that needed to come from a whole different place. And we need to understand, yeah, third parties that our client, they didn't really have a schedule or understand when those things needed to happen. So the demand from customers, and I'm actually pointing here, the demand from customers and the data coming in were all externally driven. So the only way to know internally whether you had all the data to support that demand was to use AI and machine learning processes to go back in time and look at the behavior of those customers and those data items. So what we did is we used an approach like the one we have been discussing today to integrate data from these multiple sources and run machine learning models to start to predict whether there were certain items that we should have had and had not received, and be able to trigger through AI ops to trigger support tickets and support work to go get those data items, and on the other side monitor the stability of the system. So combining these things, right? It's very different than how we used to think about data. Very different than a reporting team saying, "Hey, you need to be looking at this." Is actually impacting the interaction of a company with its clients.
And kind of on the same token, another client manufacturing devices that have IoT capabilities, utilizing that data to try to be proactive on maintenance needs and field service needs and things like that, and how to look at that data and predict when something maybe is going to fail before it actually fails, right? And so that way you get a better customer experience with the products.
Awesome. And when you talk about, pulling data from different resources to make these either predictive decisions or strategy decisions, like you mentioned before, sometimes people will associate the speed of gathering data from different sources to lead to sloppiness and messiness, and sort of governance goes out the window and security goes out the window. What are your thoughts to that? How would you answer those concerns?
So really, I think it's kind of goes back to curating that data, but not, and also, do have to put security around, certain types of data and PII data and things like that have to fit in the framework itself. But there's other sets of data that really are coming in rapidly that you want to allow your end users to be able to curate it and be able to bless the data and kind of publish it maybe back out as a blessed data source, but not necessarily an enterprise data source. I don't know, Juan, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so to your point, it is about the framework, right? It is about the flexibility. When you have many people working in an environment, right? You want to be able to ensure that you have the proper governance and security protecting that environment. At the same time, you want to enable sharing of the knowledge, right? So let's say the three of us are working in a platform, and the three of us are working on different challenges, but that are somewhat related as it comes to data. And the three of us define a sales figure in a very specific way. And it's a naive example, but we then go and make decisions or support different areas of the organization with our own understanding and inclination on what the sales figures might be. However, if there was a process for us to share, easily share, again, removing that friction, where we can say, hey, here's sales, and here's how I'm using it, and then I publish sales, and then everybody can go and see, all right, here's a sales metric, here's how it's calculated, here's where it comes from. Then starts to unify the way we think about data. So building that level of knowledge that goes from the people to the platform, and maintaining that level of knowledge from the people to the platform, allows us to be much faster and not sloppy, because then we can go look in a directory of metrics, right? For example, or in a directory of things that have already been curated to be able to accelerate the way we work with data.
Right. Kind of like crowdsourcing almost, right?
Yeah, is exactly it. Is exactly it. It's taking the knowledge from the people from their own heads and putting it into a place where it can be shared.
Right.
Awesome. And you know, Juan, as you said, there has been a flip in organizations and how they regard for data and analytics, and you and Bill, you've seen it firsthand. What do you think is the main reason that organizations continue to fall short with their analytics? I know, you know, you mentioned a few, but what would you say, you know, what are they overlooking in developing their data strategy?
And look, I don't own all the answers on this one. We could probably talk for days about different things that we've seen and honestly we've done as mistakes in time. But I think one of the biggest things that jump at me is understanding the timing of starting something up versus scaling something up. And starting up, a lot of times we go with quick approaches to starting up and pursuing, say, we're going to start building some machine learning models, or a lot of the focus goes towards what type of models are we going to build, what type of problems are we solving. Sure. The focus doesn't go immediately to it, which is okay. The focus doesn't go to what process are we going to use to get the data, so then we can get it to the model. It doesn't even go necessarily to what tool are we going to use to do the modeling. But in cases, it evolves to that. But as we have success implementing a model and connecting it to the business, and we have some reduction of cost or improvement in sales figures or improvement in experience, then that kind of gets established as that was successful. So we build another one and build another one. And what we end up with is these disconnected silos of capability. And these disconnected silos of capabilities are okay and are great to start up. But at some point, you need to go back and think about the design of how you're going to accelerate that, how are you going to scale that? Because that approach of a siloed set of capabilities gets in the way to, for example, leverage machine learning and AI throughout the organization. And so the starting up and scaling up are big considerations in my mind. I don't know what you think, Mel.
So I agree with that. And the other consideration, I think, is trust of the data, right? And you can build something, but if you lose the trust of the data's quality or not an understanding of the lineage, you don't get the adoption, you know. And so trying to gather that, gather the end users early on in the process and help them, use them to help you build out the project and build out that trust and build that curation effort. And I think that's really a key driver. I've been in a number of places where you build out a very robust environment, but there's a lack of understanding of the environment and a lack of trust. And I know I just push this button, I get these 6 cells, and this is what data I use, you know, and stuff like that. So it's really trying to get, I think, the end users involved sooner in the process, as soon as possible in the process.
Yeah, Bill, that is a great point about trust of your own data. I think a lot of us can be in positions where we want to bring in a new initiative, but we don't necessarily trust the data that we do have or the sources that we have. Maybe it's old data or dirty data. And, you know, since the session is to explore sort of real world, timely experiences, in the light of the pandemic, there are industries, you know, like retail, who their data, they're really experiencing a data deficit, where the data they had before maybe is not, you know, what can really help them drive at this time. So what are your thoughts on that and how to combat that deficit?
I'll let you go. You have some interesting thoughts on this one, so I'll let you go.
I know it's a loaded question, but just to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think earlier on we were talking about the impacts of cloud and the impacts of cloud and data and analytics. I think it's really about the consumer experience. And if for example, retailers or anybody that has an interaction with customers are very internally focused in their operations, and that reflects itself in the data. Like, for example, retailers may have been measuring how a store performed period over period. So looking at it as of last year, the comparisons no longer work, right? So now you're looking day to day, week by week. But I think those who are really making a difference, especially with how things have changed with the pandemic and the way that consumers are interacting with firms, is that the flexibility and the ability to meet customers in the experiences that they're expecting is critical. In order to identify those, you need to step away while maintaining an understanding of it, step away from your traditional way of looking at data and start thinking about what data is generated by this interaction method, what data impacts those interaction methods, like, for example, regulations in your particular area, understanding the area in which a store has an influence. It is not true, and I do not subscribe to the idea that physical locations are going to go away. I think the role is going to change a bit, and even for retailers, the role of a physical location can be expanded depending on the circumstances where you are, especially in the immediate months coming up, right? And the ones that we just passed through. So anyways, there's I know I'm talking a lot there, but it's I think at the end connects with what do we want to learn about, which is the expectations of those consumers, understand those expectations, and shape our services to meet them in their expectations. And the way to understand those behaviors and expectations are with data that is not internally focused. That is really, how is the world of our customers shaping up? And it goes from weather to the COVID cases in that particular area where stores are. So
and I think you just have to also have the flexible framework in place to not be so rigid that I have to look at period over period, month over month, and also I can adapt and quickly look at what were the customers doing yesterday, last week, and how they changed in their interactions, and also be flexible in pulling in new sources of data to help predict things like you're saying, COVID cases data and location-based data and hotspots and things like that, right? And even maybe some regulatory issues and things like we're mandated to close at 6 p.m. now or 8 p.m. Or 50% occupancy type stuff, and being able to pull that data in and align it to your sales number or sales projections and things. Like I said, having a flexible environment to be able to adapt to these new data feeds.
Interesting. And then to take it even one step further, I'm wondering, there's a lot of talk about managing employee performance and stress and the changing of the workforce, the future of work, looking almost internally for organizations. How can analytics help?
So that's a multiple hours conversation, but
I know I keep doing that to you, but I guess we'll have to reconvene.
totally okay. So there's a very interesting branch of analytics that deals with people analytics, and has been around for a really long time, and perhaps it's getting more and more important now. It perhaps being noticed a lot more now. There is a direct relationship between the way that employees are engaging and are feeling as you consider it with the success of a company. So the fact that employees are the most important asset in an organization is not just an empty saying. It's a fact. It's the blood of the organization. It's how it moves and behaves. So being able to understand friction points, I think, is very important. You don't have to start with complex centrality assessments of your team members and understand how they're interacting with the organization. You don't have to start there. You can start with, what is their experience? How am I supporting them? And very quickly understand, are people having challenges in their Zoom meetings? Are people having challenges to communicate with each other? Just use very basic metrics to start to understand what are things that could drive frustration, and then progress from there towards the impacts of those frustrations on people and people performance and retention and absenteeism, and then take it even further as to contributions of those folks. But I think it starts with, how do we take care of them? How do we protect them? How do we support them? And how do we use data and analytics to inform reducing the stress that all of our team members are already going through.
Bill, is there anything that you would like to add in terms of, sort of being on the street with customers, and maybe is there one piece of either advice you would like to give, or is there one question that everyone should be asking themselves when they finish watching this today? Is there one sort of nugget that they can take to really start the process to be more efficient with their data?
Think outside the box. Really don't be restrained to the way things traditionally have been done. It's just so much more opportunities now.
Awesome. And Juan, what would you add? What would be your nugget?
I actually love what Bill said. We've been around for quite a while and working.
Give it away, the gray hair.
I think it's the matching shirts that say you're on the same page.
So we've been around for a while, and there's generally a way in which we do things, and that can restrict our thought process. But I also have a lot of excitement about data and analytics people, because we love experimentation. And so while certain areas of our organization perhaps may think more structured, data analytics folks always think very differently and ask a lot of questions. They are very curious by nature. So my advice would be two parts. One, feed that curiosity. And continue to feed that curiosity and try to inject that curiosity into the organization. Provide the methods and the frameworks by which the organization can start to iterate and have a safe failure environment. So being able to test and learn and iterate and adjust and improve. So a safe failure environment is very, very important. The second thing is break the silos. There is no reason for silos to exist. If you're finding yourself to looking at your organization and saying, we have data everywhere, that should no longer be a reason for you not to be able to get value from it. Data everywhere is a reality. And now the question is, how do we leverage frameworks and approaches to be actually able to use it? And those are there. So those are probably the two things that come to mind.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all this today. I know I personally found it very helpful. I hope everyone else watching it feels the same way. So I just wanted to thank you so much for joining me. I'll now ask everyone who's with us to return back to the main session to continue with today's event. We will have Juan, Bill, and Tom's information up on the screen and available for you to follow up later. If you have any issues getting back to the main room, I will also have my email on the screen so you can reach out to me with any questions. But thank you so much for joining, and Juan and Bill, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Colleen.
Fun. Thank you.